Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Martin Luther King Jr., a letter from Birmingham jail, April 16, 1963. This quote was written over 45 years ago during the Civil Rights Movement in America. Still to this day, many people all over the world face similar inequalities due to their race, class, and/or caste. Two groups in particular, blacks in America and Dalits in India, continue to fight for the equality from their respective communities. Currently, the status of blacks is comparable to the status of Dalits with respect to their relative deprivations and unequal treatment. This documentary will explore these inequalities through a comparison between racial segregation in America and caste isolation in India. Family. When blacks were first forced into slavery, America was only a few colonies. Once on U.S. soil, most Africans were bred like cattle to produce American-born slaves. With slavery institutionalized in American society, family members, wives, and children were bought, sold, and traded with great ease. Black families were constantly broken up, and perhaps this provides insight to the state of black families today. Compared to the total population of the U.S., blacks are more likely to be divorced, widowed, separated, or single. They are also less likely to be married. Statistics show nearly 60% of blacks come from single-parent homes. Dalits, on the other hand, are natural citizens of India, born and raised in the country itself. Yet they have been reduced to the status of untouchables under the fourfold division of the Varna system. Untouchables are generally considered outside the hierarchy of the Varna system, but they are sometimes thought as the lowest in the Hindu caste system. Slavery and systems of servitude also existed in India, in areas such as Kerala and southern India. Slaves were property of the high caste Hindu rulers and were sold and bought like commodities in the market. However, Dalit families were never separated or broken as in the case with blacks in America. Dalits are only allowed to marry other Dalits. 98% of Dalit marriages are arranged marriages. Some are love marriages, but weddings between different Dalit castes rarely happen. Numerous forms of exploitation were forced upon both blacks and Dalit people. Centuries later, blacks in America and Dalits in India still face similar injustices as they did years ago. To comprehend the development of these inequalities mentioned, one must understand that race and caste are both social constructs. There is no biological difference between race or caste, but merely internalized ideas of separation created by man. Since there is no substantial difference between men, there must be an imposed dividing factor to make one group subordinate to the others. Religion can be considered a huge catalyst for much of the separation and prejudice faced by blacks and Dalits. Religion. Some Indian Dalits attempt to escape their degraded social status by rejecting their parental religions, that being Hinduism. Sri Narayana Guru Swami led the SNDP movement of Kerala, which established a new identity of the Dalit caste by contesting Orthodox Hinduism. Jyotiba Phule, Periyar Ramaswamy, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar launched protests of their own focused on rejecting their parents' religion and embracing another religion, which advocated equality for all. Dr. Ambedkar writes, Hinduism is an absolute chamber of horrors. The iron law of caste, the heartless law of karma, and the senseless law of status by birth are true instruments of torture that Hinduism has forged against the untouchables. Dr. Ambedkar was born a Hindu, but embraced Buddhism towards the end of his life. He felt that unless religion promoted fraternity, social equality, and liberty of all mankind, then the religion itself was flawed and doomed. Dr. Ambedkar and his many followers' conversion to Buddhism was not new to India, as Islam, Sikhism, and Christianity drew a large number of converts from the lower castes. A comparable practice was initiated for blacks in the U.S. by Marcus Garvey to establish a new black identity. Such protests were first launched by Wallace D. Fard Muhammad, who initiated the Black Muslim protest movement in the U.S. By 1934, the movement had been known as the Nation of Islam, and Elijah Muhammad became the known leader. Through the Nation of Islam, many prominent black leaders were spurned, such as Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali. The Black Muslim ideology was linked with the Pan-African movement. Ergo, a new identity was formed within the black community that clung to an African heritage and civilization. Therefore, the Black Muslim movement gave blacks the opportunity to claim an African history and a new religion that was not imposed on them by their oppressors. It is well documented that Black Americans and Dalit Indians have worked in similar ways to achieve their goals of justice and desired ideals of equality. Their movements have generated a sense of self-respect and awareness of basic rights that did not exist otherwise under their parental religions. Nonetheless, religious oppression is not the only common thread shared between the two groups. Both experience extreme rejection within the school systems of their country and the education attainment of their respective communities. Education. The education attainment graph shows that Blacks, compared to the rest of America, are more likely to have less than a high school diploma. Blacks are extremely less likely to have a 4-year college degree, master's degree, or a PhD. Statistics show that Blacks in America earn about 15% less than the total population. As a result, college is less affordable to Blacks than it is for other races. More or less, a cycle is formed within the Black community. Poor schools produce students who cannot get into college. As adults, these Blacks cannot attain high-paying jobs because they do not have the adequate skills or education. As parents, these Blacks cannot donate money to help their children's school, and they cannot move into better neighborhoods with better schools because they are marginalized into a certain area. Essentially, if Blacks were able to attain higher levels of education, they would be able to secure better jobs and stop this vicious cycle. The case Brown versus the Board of Education became known as the trial that ended segregation in America. Desegregation allows students of all races to attend the same school. Desegregation was met with much opposition, as many white Americans did not want the Black students to taint their innocent children. They would pollute the classrooms, and it was quote-unquote un-American. Comparable to the opposition Blacks face in the school system, Dalits encountered similar issues in their pursuit of a better education. In many cases, Dalit students were forced to sit outside the classroom and even outside the school, while the higher caste students were able to be taught inside. There were many cases of undeserved punishment dealt to the Dalit students. The Dalit children were not allowed to retaliate, or if they did, they would receive increased abuse. Thus, many Dalits were essentially scared into not attending school. Dr. Ambedkar understood the importance of education and dedicated a significant portion of his life to improving the social status of Dalit Indians. Policies have been put in place to improve national enrollment rates. Both Blacks in America and Dalits in India can attribute reasons for not attending school to other injustices in their communities, the most important of which is health care. In some cases, a parent's job can provide health care for the entire family. However, how many Blacks and Dalits have the skills to attain these types of jobs? Jobs. After Blacks were freed from slavery, most did not know what to do, so they stayed on their former slave masters' land. Poor, illiterate, and intimidated by the widespread violence after the Civil War, many former slaves agreed to sharecropping contracts. Sharecropping was a system that kept Blacks in debt and serving their landowners for years to come. Dalits were also bonded to their landowners because of debt. In an agrarian society, where around 70% of the population earns a living through agriculture, landowners specifically target Dalits to tend to their land because once a Dalit is in debt, it's like modern-day slavery. After sharecropping, Blacks face many prejudices throughout the job market. These injustices continue to exist decades later. Records show that during the hiring process, potential employees have been skipped over if their name reflects an ethnic or Black identity. Outside of the agricultural realm, Dalits are unable to hide their caste as well because of their name. Dalit status has often been historically associated with occupations regarded as ritually impure, such as working with leather, butchering, or removal of trash. The caste system has forced Dalits to do menial jobs for generations. Despite this system of opportunity deprivation, Dalits have been able to transcend their caste in certain instances. Dr. Najaraju is of the Dalit caste and a professor at the University of Hyderabad. He was able to receive governmental funding as a child to go to school, and he eventually attained his PhD. Also, Dr. Ratnam of the University of Hyderabad, who's of the Dalit caste as well, mentioned the benefit of having a job with the government. Quote, Dalits who work with the government make just as much as non-Dalits make, end quote, says Dr. Ratnam. But of course, some Dalits do not trust the government. Nonetheless, with a high level of education, these men were able to attain better jobs and command respect that is not normally given to Dalits. It draws back to the original idea that education is the only way to create substantial change in the lives of the oppressed. In conclusion, Dalits and blacks have experienced centuries of oppression from their respective countries. These oppressions draw many similarities between the two groups. Both have found one source of their oppression to stem from their religion. Other sources include past inequalities that have lasting effects even today, and the unwavering job market that has systematically left blacks and Dalits at the bottom of the economy. Even though their struggles are similar, blacks and Dalits are not the same. Much more research needs to be done in order to fully understand the problems of blacks and Dalits and to successfully rectify them. Still, much can be learned and shared between these two groups as they move towards equality. There have been numerous attempts by Dalits and blacks to overcome their given oppression and increase awareness of their situations. It is essential to note that governmental policies in the U.S. and in India still need to be made more effective in their implementation process. For example, specific laws need to be made stricter in order to wipe out the practice of untouchability and race-based discrimination. Only by such measures can the Dalits and the blacks fully be integrated within their respective societies in a meaningful way. Thank you.